The glass shattered against my back. Jennifer's hands were around my throat, her smile never wavering as she whispered, "You should have just let it happen." My fingers closed around the USB drive in my pocket, the only proof of her plan to erase me. The security alert on my phone lit up. Front door unlocked. Jennifer Brown. She was already inside my house, and my husband had given her the key months ago. I had 30 seconds before she found what I'd stolen. The drive burned in my palm. Too late to run. The hum of the cooling fan vibrated through Sarah's fingertips as she navigated the cluttered desktop. Dust motes danced in the glow of the monitor, smelling of ozone and stale coffee. She clicked a folder labeled The Upgrade Project. Instead of architectural blueprints, rows of scanned driver's licenses flickered into view, Jennifer's face paired with a dozen different names. Sarah's pulse thudded against her ribs like a trapped bird. She fumbled a silver thumb drive from her pocket, the cold metal scraping against the port until it seated with a muted click. The progress bar crawled. 10%. 20. Each mechanical whir from the hallway sounded like a heavy footstep on a gallows floor. Sarah's breath hitched. She looked at the screen, her eyes darting across the names. Sarah J. Miller, Sarah Johnson Brown, S.L. Johnson. It wasn't just identity theft. It was a blueprint for a takeover. Jennifer hadn't just stolen her credit card numbers. She was harvesting her life. Sarah gripped the edge of the mahogany desk, her knuckles turning white. The ledger habit kicked in. She mentally tallied the cost of the laptop, the desk, the very air she was breathing, trying to find a balance sheet that made sense of this betrayal. The silver locket at her throat felt like a lead weight. She adjusted it, her fingers trembling. 50%. The drive hummed, a tiny mechanical heart beating in time with her own. She could smell the faint, cloying scent of Jennifer's peppermint tea lingering in the room, a sweet mask for the rot she had just uncovered. The door hinges groaned with a sharp, metallic protest. Sarah yanked the drive free, the plastic casing biting into her palm. Jennifer stood in the threshold, her silhouette sharp and jagged against the yellow hallway light. She clutched a glass of water, the ice cubes clinking against the glass like a slow, rhythmic countdown. Working late? Jennifer's voice held a jagged edge, like a serrated blade hidden in velvet. She crossed the room, her silk robe rustling against the hardwood floor with a sound like a snake moving through dry grass. Sarah shoved her hands into her sweater pockets, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her sternum. "Checking the grocery list," she lied, her voice tight and thin. Jennifer stopped inches away. The air between them tasted of copper and unspoken threats. Jennifer's eyes, unblinking and predatory, drifted to the glowing screen, then to Sarah's clenched fist. She didn't move for a heartbeat, then she lunged. Her fingers locked around Sarah's wrist, nails digging into the skin with a sharp, stinging heat. "Give it to me," Jennifer hissed, her breath smelling of peppermint and something bitter, like bile. She slammed Sarah against the desk. A lamp toppled, the bulb popping with a sharp crack before the glass shattered against the floor. Sarah swung her free arm, her knuckles connecting with Jennifer's cheekbone with a dull thud. They tumbled into the shadows, a frantic tangle of limbs and gasping breaths. The scent of scorched dust from the broken lamp filled the air. Sarah felt the sharp sting of a glass shard slicing her arm, but she didn't let go of the drive. She twisted, kicking out at Jennifer's shins, and managed to scramble toward the door. Sarah didn't look back. She sprinted through the hallway, her breath coming in ragged, burning gulps. She burst through the front door into the humid night air, the scent of blooming jasmine clashing with the metallic tang of her own fear. She reached her SUV. her fingers fumbling with the keys until the locks clicked open with a mechanical chirp. She threw herself into the driver's seat and slammed the door, the heavy thud echoing in the quiet suburban street. She jammed the key into the ignition, and the engine roared to life, a powerful vibration that shook the steering wheel. As she backed out of the driveway, the tires screeched against the pavement, leaving black streaks on the pristine concrete. She clutched the USB drive so hard, it left a rectangular imprint in her palm. The data on that drive was her only shield, a digital record of the woman who was trying to erase her. She drove aimlessly for blocks, her eyes blurring with tears she refused to let fall. She was a fixer. She handled crises. But as she gripped the wheel, she realized she couldn't fix a ghost that had already moved into her house. 2 miles away, Sarah pulled into the flickering neon glow of a 24-hour gas station. The smell of gasoline and cheap coffee offered a strange, industrial comfort. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over the home security app. With a shaking hand, she tapped the icon. The screen flickered to life, showing the grainy, night vision view of her front porch. A car pulled into her driveway, a sleek, black sedan she didn't recognize. The door opened, and Jennifer stepped out. She didn't look like a woman who had just been in a physical brawl. She looked calm, calculated. Sarah watched, her blood turning to ice, as Jennifer reached into her pocket and pulled out a key. It was the silver spare key Michael had claimed to lose months ago at the park. The lock turned with a soft, audible click through the phone speaker. Jennifer stepped inside, the heavy oak door closing behind her with a finality that made Sarah's stomach churn. She was in. She was in Sarah's kitchen, Sarah's living room, Sarah's sanctuary. Sarah watched the little green dot on the app move through the house, the motion sensors tracking a predator through the rooms where Sarah slept and dreamed. The weight of the betrayal hit her then, a physical blow that made her slump against the steering wheel. Jennifer hadn't just found the key. She had been given the key, or she had stolen it long ago, waiting for the perfect moment to slip into Sarah's skin. Sarah stared at the screen, watching the lights in her master bedroom flicker on. She felt a profound sense of erasure, as if she were already becoming a ghost in her own life. She needed to call Michael. Her thumb hovered over his contact, but a cold knot of doubt tightened in her chest. If Jennifer had the key, what else did she have? Sarah's mind raced, performing a frantic audit of her marriage. Every late night Michael spent at the office, every lost item, every strange mood. They all began to align like columns in a ledger she had failed to balance. The silence of the car was broken by the sharp, electronic trill of her phone. It was Marcus, her firm's biggest client, the man whose account kept the lights on at her marketing agency. She answered, her voice trembling. "Marcus, it's late, Sarah," Marcus interrupted, his voice cold and distant, like a winter wind. "We're done. I'm pulling the account, all of them." The words hit like a physical weight. "What? Why?" "We just finalized the Q3 strategy. The numbers are perfect, Marcus. To the penny." "I don't care about the pennies, Sarah. I care about stability. I received an anonymous tip tonight. Documents, emails, medical records. They say you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're unstable, paranoid. I can't have my brand tied to a sinking ship." Sarah felt the world tilt. "Marcus, listen to me. That's not true. It's a setup. I have proof." "The tip came from inside your own circle, Sarah. Someone who knows you. Don't call me again. My lawyers will handle the transition." The line went dead with a sharp, final click. subverted. Sarah sat in the dark car, the silence pressing in on her ears. This was the moment where she had to be smart. She was a professional. She knew how to handle a PR crisis. She decided to go straight to the source. She would call the investigator she'd used for the Sterling merger last year. He was discreet, fast, and owed her a favor. He could trace the anonymous tip back to its origin in an hour. She dialed the number. "Ben, it's Sarah Johnson. I need a trace on an email sent to Marcus Thorne. Now, I'll pay triple." "Give me 10 minutes, Sarah." Ben's voice was a gravelly comfort. Sarah felt a surge of hope. This was how you fought back. You used the tools of the trade. You followed the data. She watched the clock on the dashboard. 11:42, 11:43. At 11:50, her phone buzzed. "I found it," Ben said. It wasn't even hidden that well. No masking, no bounce backs. It came from a private server registered to a residence in Georgetown. Sarah's shoulders dropped. Relief washed over her like cool water. "My house? It came from my house?" "No," Ben said, his voice dropping an octave. "It came from a secondary account belonging to Michael Johnson." "But Sarah..." "That's not the bad part. When I hit the server to track the sender, I triggered a silent alarm, the kind that notifies the authorities of a data breach." "And Sarah? The account isn't just sending emails. It's been systematically draining your firm's escrow accounts for months. It looks like you've been funneling money to an offshore holding company in the Caymans. To the outside world, it looks like you're the one stealing, and you're using your husband's account to cover your tracks. The world didn't just tilt, it vanished." "What? I haven't touched those accounts." "The trail says you did. Every login matches your personal device ID. Every transfer happened while you were working late. Sarah, the police are going to see a woman who stole millions and then staged a mental breakdown to avoid prison. You didn't just lose the client. You're about to lose your freedom. I can't help you with this. Don't call me again." The line went dead. Sarah dropped the phone. It clattered against the center console, the screen glowing like a malevolent eye. She wasn't just being replaced. She was being framed for her own destruction. Jennifer hadn't just taken her life. She had turned Sarah's own meticulous record-keeping into a noose. She drove back to her house, not because it was safe, but because she had nowhere else to go. The street was quiet, the shadows of the oak trees stretching across the pavement like skeletal fingers. She parked a block away and walked toward her home, her heart thudding against her ribs. The air smelled of damp earth and the salt spray from the distant coast. She let herself in through the mudroom, the heavy door creaking softly. The house was silent, but it felt different. Heavy, as if the walls were leaning in. She crept up the stairs, her feet silent on the plush carpet. She reached her bedroom door and pushed it open. The room was dark, save for a sliver of moonlight cutting across the bed. On her pillow lay her favorite blue gala dress, the one she was supposed to wear to the Hamptons this weekend. It had been shredded. The silk was torn into jagged strips, the delicate lace hanging like cobwebs. It looked like the carcass of something beautiful. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing the ruined fabric. It felt cold and limp. This wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. Jennifer was already in her bed, already in her clothes, already in her head. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. She turned to leave, but the door behind her slammed shut. A figure stepped out of the shadows of the walk-in closet. It wasn't Jennifer. It was a man, tall and broad, wearing a dark hoodie and a surgical mask. The smell of stale cigarettes and cheap cologne hit her. "The drive," the man said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. Give it to me, and you don't get hurt. Sarah backed away, her heels catching on the shredded dress. Who are you? What do you want? You know what I want. The silver drive. Jennifer said you'd be stubborn. He lunged. Sarah scrambled across the bed, the silk strips tangling around her ankles. He grabbed her waist, his fingers digging into her ribs. Sarah screamed, the sound muffled by the heavy drapes. She kicked out, her heel connecting with his shin. He grunted but didn't let go. They tumbled onto the floor. Sarah's hand hit the nightstand, her fingers brushing against a heavy glass carafe of water. She grabbed it and swung with everything she had. The glass shattered against the side of the man's head, water splashing across her face, cold and shocking. He fell back, dazed. Sarah didn't wait. She bolted for the door, flinging it open and racing down the stairs. She didn't go for the front door. She knew he'd catch her in the driveway. She ran for the garage, her breath coming in frantic, sobbing gasps. The garage was a cavern of shadows, smelling of oil and old rubber. She fumbled for the light switch, but the bulb just flickered and died, leaving her in a strobe-like darkness. She heard the man's heavy boots thudding on the stairs. Pop, pop, pop. The sound of his knuckles cracking echoed in the confined space. A rhythmic, terrifying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sarah's hand closed around something heavy on the workbench. A tire iron, cold, solid metal. She gripped it, her knuckles white. The door to the kitchen burst open. The man stepped into the garage, his silhouette framed by the light from the house. He was holding a knife, the blade gleaming in the faint light. "Last chance, Sarah," he said. Sarah didn't answer. She swung the tire iron with a primal scream. The metal connected with the man's shoulder with a sickening crunch. He cried out, dropping the knife. Sarah swung again, hitting him in the ribs. He slumped against the side of Michael's SUV, gasping for air. Sarah didn't stay to finish it. She scrambled into the mudroom and slammed the heavy, reinforced door, sliding the deadbolt home with a sharp clack. She leaned against the door, her chest heaving, the metallic taste of fear thick on her tongue. She was trapped in her own home, but for a moment, she was safe. She looked down at her hands. They were covered in grease and a dark, sticky smear that she realized with a jolt was blood. Not hers. She needed to think. She needed to see. She went to the small desk in the mudroom where she kept her laptop. Her fingers flew over the keys, her mind a blur of numbers and codes. She needed to know who sent that email. She needed to know if Michael was really the one who destroyed her. She pulled up the firm's server logs, bypassing the security layers she had helped design. She followed the digital breadcrumbs, the strings of data that formed the backbone of her professional life. She found the email to Marcus. She found the timestamp, 10:14 p.m. She checked Michael's location history on their shared family account. At 10:14 p.m., his phone was at the office. But the email hadn't been sent from the office. It had been sent from his professional account, yes. But the digital signature, the hidden fingerprint of the device, wasn't his laptop. It was a mobile device. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She checked the ID of the mobile device. It was a model she didn't recognize. A burner phone. But then she saw it. A small, overlooked detail in the metadata. The burner phone had been synced to the house's Wi-Fi just once. 2 weeks ago. The name of the device on the network log, upgrade_01. Michael hadn't sent the email. Jennifer had used his credentials, his life, to destroy her. But Michael had to know. He had to have seen the signs. Unless he was so blinded by the new version of his wife that he refused to look at the cracks. Sarah felt a cold, hard resolve settle in her gut. She wasn't just a fixer anymore. She was a hunter. She looked at the calendar on the wall. The Hamptons Gala, the 4th of July. That was where the upgrade would be finalized. That was where Jennifer would officially step into Sarah's shoes in front of the world. "You want my life?" Sarah whispered into the dark room. "Then you're going to have to take all of it." The drive to the Hamptons was a blur of gray asphalt and salt-heavy air. Sarah stayed in a cheap motel 10 miles away, her skin crawling with the need for a shower she didn't dare take for long. She spent the night watching the beach house from a distance, a sprawling glass and steel fortress perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. The waves crashed against the rocks below with a rhythmic, booming thud that she could feel in her marrow. It sounded like the world was breaking apart. She waited until the caterers began to arrive, their white vans clogging the narrow driveway. She slipped in through the service entrance, wearing a plain black uniform she'd stolen from a laundry truck. The smell of roasting lamb and expensive perfume filled the air, a sickeningly sweet mask for the confrontation to come. She found Jennifer's room on the 2nd floor. It was a master suite that looked out over the ocean, filled with the golden light of the setting sun. Jennifer's things were everywhere: her makeup, her jewelry, her scent. And there, on the nightstand, was a small, leather-bound book. Sarah opened it. It wasn't a ledger. It was a journal. June 14th. Michael is responding well to the vulnerability tactic. He thinks Sarah is cold. I am the warmth he's been missing. The transfer of the escrow funds is 60% complete. She won't even see the handcuffs coming. July 1st. The gala is the end. Once the board sees her break down, Michael will sign the power of attorney. Then Sarah Johnson ceases to exist. Sarah felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. She tucked the journal into her waistband and turned to leave. But the door opened. Jennifer stood there, wearing a shimmering silver gown that looked like liquid moonlight. She held a glass of champagne, her eyes widening with a flicker of genuine surprise before they settled into a cold, hard stare. "You're like a cockroach, Sarah," Jennifer said, her voice smooth and melodic. "You just don't know when to die." "I know how to balance a book, Jennifer," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "And right now, you're in the red." Jennifer laughed, a sharp, dissonant sound. "The board is downstairs. Michael is downstairs. To them, I am the woman who saved the firm while you lost your mind. You have nothing. I have your journal. I have the drive." Jennifer's face contorted. She lunged, her silk heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She grabbed Sarah's hair, pulling her toward the balcony. The wind whipped around them, smelling of salt and decay. "You're an obsolete model, Sarah," Jennifer screamed over the roar of the ocean. "I am the better version. I am the one he loves. I am the one they trust." She shoved Sarah against the glass railing. The height was dizzying, the white foam of the surf churning hundreds of feet below. Sarah felt the cold glass biting into her back. She looked into Jennifer's eyes and saw the void, the hollow, desperate need of a woman who had no identity of her own. Sarah reached down and grabbed a heavy stone planter from the balcony floor. She swung it with both hands, the ceramic shattering against Jennifer's shoulder. Jennifer cried out, her grip loosening. Sarah shoved her back, scrambling away from the edge. She ran back into the house, her heart hammering. She needed Michael. She needed him to see. She found him in the library, staring out at the guests on the lawn. He looked tired, his sweater hanging loose on his shoulders. "Michael?" Sarah gasped, her breath coming in ragged bursts. "Michael, look at this. The drive, the journal." She's been framing me. She's the one who stole the money. Michael turned, but he didn't look relieved. He looked at her with a profound, soul-crushing pity. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft and broken. "Jennifer told me you'd do this. She said you'd steal her things, that you'd make up stories about drives and journals. You need help, honey. Real help." "Michael, no. Look at the dates. Look at the device IDs. Subverted." "I've already looked, Sarah," Michael said. He reached out and took the USB drive from her shaking hand. "Jennifer showed me everything this morning. She showed me the logs of you accessing my accounts. She showed me the hidden folders on your laptop. She's been trying to protect you, to keep this quiet so we could get you into a facility without a scandal." Sarah felt the floor drop out from under her. "She showed you?" "Michael, she's lying. She's the one who planted those files." "Enough!" Michael's voice cracked. "I wanted to believe you. I really did. But you're stalking her, Sarah. You're obsessed. You're wearing a caterer's uniform to sneak into a party? Look at yourself." He turned as Jennifer stepped into the room, her silver gown torn at the shoulder, a bruise already blooming on her cheek. She looked fragile, terrified. "Michael, she attacked me." Jennifer sobbed, her voice a masterpiece of manipulation. "She was on the balcony. She tried to push me." Michael pulled Jennifer into his arms, shielding her from Sarah. "It's okay. I have the drive. She can't hurt you anymore." He looked at Sarah, his eyes cold and final. "I'm calling the police, Sarah. Not for the money. For your own safety. I can't let you destroy yourself like this." The betrayal was total. Sarah watched as the man she had loved, the man she had built a life with, handed the only evidence of her innocence to the woman who was murdering her soul. Jennifer looked over Michael's shoulder, her eyes meeting Sarah's. There was no pity there, only triumph. "Take her to the guest room," Jennifer whispered. "Don't let the guests see. It would be profoundly irrelevant to the evening." Michael nodded. He grabbed Sarah's arm, not with the tenderness of a husband, but with the firm, clinical grip of a jailer. He led her down the hall and shoved her into a small, windowless guest room, locking the door with a heavy, metallic thunk. Sarah fell to the floor, the silence of the room pressing in on her. She could hear the muffled sounds of the party downstairs, the clinking of glasses, the polite laughter, the hum of a life that was no longer hers. She sat in the dark, her fingers tracing the silver locket at her throat. She thought of her father, the way he had gambled away their home while her mother begged for mercy. She had spent her whole life trying to be unevictable, trying to account for every penny, every risk. And in the end, she had been blindsided by the one variable she couldn't quantify: love. But as the minutes ticked by, the panic began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She was a fixer, and a fixer doesn't stop until the job is done. She reached into her waistband. Jennifer had taken the drive, but she hadn't found the journal. It was still there, tucked against Sarah's skin, and Jennifer had made one fatal mistake. She had left Sarah in the guest room next to the media center. Sarah stood up. She felt the rigid metal stay of her corset biting into her ribs. She reached down and yanked it free, the fabric tearing with a sharp protest. She knelt by the door, her fingers working the lock with a precision born of desperation. Click. The door swung open. Sarah slipped into the hallway, a shadow among shadows. She made her way to the media room, the air smelling of expensive leather and electronics. She sat down at the main console, her fingers flying across the interface. She didn't need the drive. She had the cloud backup. Jennifer had been so focused on the physical evidence that she had forgotten the one thing Sarah never did. She always kept a second set of books. Downstairs, the music swelled. Jennifer was beginning her speech. Sarah could hear her voice through the floorboards, confident, melodic, perfect. "We are entering a new era at the firm," Jennifer said. "An era of transparency, of growth. And while my dear friend Sarah is taking a much-needed medical leave, I am honored to carry her torch." Sarah hit the final key. The massive 100-inch screen in the ballroom didn't show the promotional video of the firm's success. It showed the journal. Page after page of Jennifer's cold, calculated plan. It showed the footage from the garage, the masked man, the struggle, the knuckle-cracking cadence of a hired killer. And finally, it showed the one thing Jennifer could never erase: her original face. The screen flashed a photo from 10 years ago. A woman named Elena Vance, a rival Sarah had defeated in a hostile takeover. Elena Vance, who had spent a decade and a fortune on plastic surgery to become Jennifer Brown. The silence that fell over the ballroom was absolute. Sarah walked to the top of the grand staircase. She looked down at the sea of shocked faces, at Michael's pale, horrified expression, and at Jennifer, no, Elena, who stood frozen in the center of the room, her mask, finally, irrevocably shattered. "The audit is complete," Sarah said, her voice echoing through the hall. "And the accounts are settled." The police arrived 10 minutes later. The list ritual of Officer David Thompson was the only sound in the room as he led Elena away in handcuffs. Michael tried to approach Sarah, his hands shaking, his voice a pathetic whimper of, "I'm sorry." Sarah didn't look at him. She didn't say a word. She walked out of the beach house, through the salt-heavy air, and didn't look back. 6 months later, Sarah sat in her new townhouse in Georgetown. The walls were thick stone, the security was state-of-the-art, and the ledger on her desk was perfectly balanced. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. Coffee, $4.12. Security system, $12,500. Freedom, priceless. She closed the book and looked out the window at the quiet, sterile street. She was no longer afraid of being evicted. She had built a fortress of her own, and this time she was the only one with the key.